I am really so overwhelmed by all of you being here today. And somebody told me, actually Amy, told me there's so many people outside walking, trying to come in here. So first, I'm going to say Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Let me introduce myself to you. I am Sue Barazi. I am the vice president of this great, magnificent Islamic center. And among you are all of our people here. So, like I said, your presence here and the amount that you came here is really emotionally overwhelming to me, because I think it's awesome to see so many people standing with us in solidarity. Our gathering here today is a very sad occasion. It is sad that we keep finding ourselves gathering to pray for innocent victims of violence. May peace and blessing be upon them. Whether it's at the Noor Mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, or the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. All of these are places of worship. Folks, words matter. People cannot continue to perpetuate hate and bigotry against Muslims, against Jews, LGBTQ people, or any other marginalized group to tear people apart. Government leaders cannot continue to make Muslims, Jews, brown-skinned people the boogeyman, the scary monster, just so they can gain political position or whatever they go after. Words of hatred leads to acts of hatred, as we continuously see in their manifesto, whatever the heck they post on Facebook and social media. We witness that evidence of the hate speech in their New Zealand, in Pittsburgh, in even the church in South Carolina. This is horrible. All the people were doing there, doing nothing but worshiping their Creator. If you cannot feel safe in a house of worship, where on the heck do you feel safe? Just tell me where. Was this massacre a surprise to anybody? No. It is not. Of course not. With the rise of hateful rhetoric from white supremacists, okay, let's just call it what it is. It's a domestic terrorism, okay? And it is not a surprise to any of us here. Otherwise, you guys would not be here. Terrorism does not choose its victim. And we no longer, all of us collectively, we no longer can afford each time it happens to just say, oh, we send you love and prayers. That should be good enough for you. We gotta take action. We gotta do something. We gotta stand together, and we got to stop the bigotry, the xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia. Everybody is affected, just like the other. Look at you folks, we are one community. Whatever people say to tear us apart and make us hate the other one, we cannot continue to stand for it. I know you're not, because you're here. And we have to stop it, and we gotta stop it right now. Words have consequences. America is made stronger by immigrants, as our history shows. Heck, we all came from somewhere. We all came on a different boat, but guess what? Right now, we are all on the same boat. And so we need to care for each other. Instead of demonizing and attacking each other, we are not each other's enemy. Okay? We need to stop demonizing the other, whatever the other is. We gotta stop them. Indeed, the beauty and wisdom of God imparted to all our great prophets and teaches us that God's divine light shine equally bright on all of us. We, as one community, as one human family, have to work together against the hate and bigotry in all its forms. So love is bigger than hate. I will not use that word that says hate. You know what I'm talking about. I believe in this country. I believe in its people. I believe in our value, American value, human value, West Virginia value, that we can all work together in harmony for human dignity, that we can all live together in peace and harmony against hate. We are one human family across races, religions, countries, and borders. We are one human family, so please keep our human family together. With that, I will start the program by having Sheikh Mustafa. He will recite Quran verses. He would be followed by Imam Nasir Abdus Salam to translate and give us Islamic reflection. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. May God bless you all. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين ولا تكونوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون صدق الله العظيم.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you, and welcome to our guests. I'm going to translate what our Sheikh just read from the Quran. The Quran said, "O you who believe, seek God's help with patience, perseverance, and prayer, for God is with those who patiently persevere. And do not say about those people who are killed in the sake of God, they are dead. No, they are living, even though you do not perceive it. And be sure we shall test you with some fear and hunger, some loss in goods or lives, or the fruits of your hard work, but give glad news to those who patiently persevere. And to those when afflicted with calamity, say, to God we belong, and truly to him is our return. They are those on whom descends the blessing from God and his mercy, and they are the ones who receive guidance." So this is a very emotional moment. I'm going to try to hold myself together after reading those verses. They're very powerful. So I just wanted to make two remarks, a word of encouragement for our Muslim brothers and sisters, and a word of appreciation to our non-Muslim neighbors and friends. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, he said in a hadith, one of his traditions, and it's actually close to the verses that were just read. He said, "Ajaban li amr al-mu'min, inna amrahu kullahu khair, wa laysa dhaka li ahadan illa al-mu'min. In asabathu sarra, shakara Allah fakana khayran lah, wa in asabathu darra, sabara fakana khayran lah." So the translation is, the Prophet Muhammad said, peace be upon him, that the affair of the believer is something that is amazing. Everything is good. Everything is good. And that's not for anyone but the true believer, meaning the one who has a real connection with his Lord, his or her Lord. And then he goes on to elaborate. He said, if something good, something that brings joy happens to him, then he thanks God. He's grateful for that. And that's good for him because God rewards gratitude. And then he said, when something evil happens to him, he is patient with that thing. So that is also good for him, meaning that God is pleased when we are struck with calamities, we show patience, and there's a reward in that. So for our brothers and sisters, we live with the promise of God that everything that happens to us, and in one narration, one of the wives of the Prophet, Aisha, radiallahu anha, may God be pleased with her, she mentioned even if something pricks, a thorn pricks us, with the slightest amount of pain, and he said, yes, we will be rewarded for that. So any sadness, any hardship we experience is something that will be compensated by our Lord. And for our non-Muslim neighbors and friends, let me reiterate the sentiment of how appreciative we are of your presence here. It fills my heart with joy, even though it's a sad occasion. The Quran, it includes non-Muslims in its address. Humanity as a whole is spoken to. And the purpose of the human being is divided into three main categories. So the first, you have al-khilafa, which is occupying the earth in succeeding generations. The second is ibadah, and really I should have mentioned that last because it's the most important, worshiping God. And the last is imaratul ard, which is, I'll loosely translate as custodianship of the earth, of society. So your presence here, and praise is to God, it's showing that there's a fulfillment of that purpose. All of us are here, even if we don't share with one another in our particular forms of worship, we do share in imaratul ard, in custodianship, making sure that our society is in the best state that it can be. And that when we go out and we interact with the world, we do so on the basis of desiring the best interest of everyone. That's something that we all have in common, and it's something that's greatly appreciated from you all. So with that, I'll close and say, may God help us to be good custodians of one another, help us to build and maintain our society so that everyone feels safe, because as was mentioned before, all of us have felt the pain of these types of attacks, and may God give us the strength just to simply be good neighbors. And with your presence here, I see that taking place. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for these words of wisdom. I'm going to spend a very little bit time, describing every member of our panel here, but we're going to start with the mayor, the best mayor I have seen so far. I don't know about you people. Mayor of Charleston, Amy Goodwin, nice to have you with us.
I was telling Sue on the way up, or the way over, I was running in 3-inch heels to get here. But as I was running, I saw so many friends along the way running here as well. I came through the door and I said to Sue, "It's packed. You can't start yet. There's so many people who want to be here with all of us today." That just is, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Words matter.
Yes, it does.
Words matter. Peace be with you. Peace be with you, each and every one of you. I'm not a stranger to this community. I look out and I see so many of my dear, dear friends in the audience. Hello, my dentist is here. You know me. I will always be with you. Always be with you. And while we're here to share our pain and lean on one another for strength, let me share with you that I am very grateful for those with the character to be here with all of us today. But let me share with you something from the city, my promise and the promise from the citizens of Charleston. Today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, every day that I have in my honor to serve you, I will not only condemn the hate and racism, I'll confront it. As your mayor, I'll confront it. I will not be silent. I will absolutely not be vague. I won't be vague about it. I'll work to protect everyone in our community, Muslims, blacks, Jews, immigrants, every single person. Peace be with them. And I'll stand tall, and I will stand with you, each and every one of you. My peace with all of you. Thank you.
Folks, this is what we need. We need our elected officials. We need our government official to set a good example for all of us to follow. If we have everybody like Mayor Goodwin, who speaks the truth, and that's all she's doing, she's speaking the truth, we can all take lessons from that. We have to tell our other government official to do so. Next, I'm going to introduce you to a man who was so awesome. He was invited 3 weeks ago before the ugly incident at the state capitol to do a prayer the last Friday of the Senate chamber session, and he thought about it and said, no, I'm not going to do it by myself. I am going to do it as an interfaith, and he was so kind to invite me and invite the rabbi to stand with him and say the prayer. And it so happened then the poster came, and guess what? We all look geniuses. Actually, he's the genius. May I introduce you to Bishop Mike Klossmeyer. He's the Episcopal Diocese of West Virginia. He's the head, but he said not to say that.
I am sorry I have to run off. We have a new priest coming, or he is here in Charleston, and I need to install him in a few minutes. So I apologize for being here and then running out. But I do want to tell you that the bishops of the Episcopal Church met last week, and you were all in our prayers. And I have to tell you that it was very clear that the Episcopal Church, I will say the Diocese of West Virginia, and the Anglican Communion, which is a worldwide confederation of all the Anglican churches, Episcopal churches, we will not stand for racism, bigotry, or hatred. That is something that we pledge and have pledged always. One of our requirements, I guess you would say, is when we are baptized, we say, will you respect the dignity of every human being? And the answer is, I will. So that's the foundation of where we start from. So I bring you greetings and love from the diocese. I bring you greetings and love from the Episcopal Church. And as an aside, if you woke up real early 7 or 8 months ago and watched the royal wedding, my boss was the guy who got to preach at that. And I will tell you, the one thing he keeps pushing hard is love is the way. Love is the way. Love is the way. And so if we can all gather in that umbrella, that love is the only way forward, we will live together in love. And so let me just say a prayer, please. God, in whose perfect kingdom no sword is drawn, but the sword of righteousness, justice, and peace, and no strength is known but the strength of love. We pray you so mightily to shed and spread abroad your Spirit, that all peoples and ranks may be gathered together under one banner, as children of one God and Father of all, to whom be dominion and glory, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you so much. He's a very special friend. Next, we're going to have with us our dear friend, Rabbi Victor Yuruki, who's been like a family member of this community for such a long, long time. We always count on him to stand up for the voiceless, to speak for humanity, to speak for what's right. Doesn't matter how much it affects him, he speaks the truth. He constantly does. He defends the human rights. He defends the dignity of people. And we welcome you, Rabbi.
I better not. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom aleichem. Peace be upon us all. I wish we weren't here tonight. I wish we were here for Eid al-Fitr and joining in the celebration of the end of Ramadan. I wish we weren't here tonight. I wish we were here for Jummah and we could listen to the beauty of the Adhan, revel in the scholarship of Islam tonight. I wish we weren't here tonight. I wish we were together like we were last night with the Imam and myself and discussed our shared traditions together, celebrate our commonalities, and grow through the understanding of our differences. As Sue said, thanks to the goodness and the warmth of the brothers and sisters of this community I hold in such esteem and love, we, members of the non-Muslim community, are often treasured guests for Eid. We are welcome for Jummah. We are mutually respected at dialogues. But more and more, we find ourselves together for moments like this, crying on each other's shoulders because of another attack, embracing one another because some have chosen to divide, reassuring each other because too many want to traffic in hate. Too many want to desire conflict over understanding, promotes suspicion of the immigrant and the stranger, and who, as we saw, unfortunately, Friday in New Zealand, weaponize their vile words and writings into deeds of devastating destruction and wanton slaughter. We are here because the world is becoming a very narrow bridge. As Jews, we are all too familiar with what happened in New Zealand. And as frequent victims of these unspeakable acts, we now come to comfort our Muslim brothers and sisters, partners in faith, and join this community in refuah, in shifa, in healing, for those who are still clinging for life, shalom, salam and peace for the innocents who were slaughtered. With your permission, to paraphrase the Quran, surely they belong to Allah, and to Him they have returned. And as Jews, while we know tragedy, we also remember when our cemeteries were desecrated in St. Louis, Muslims were the first to come to our aid. When a gunman attacked the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, it was the local mosques that were among the very first to raise money for the families. They were among the very first to express their condolences to the Jewish community here in Charleston. My friends, I wish we weren't here tonight to mourn innocent Muslims who were murdered for being Muslim, who were attacked because Islamophobia and anti-Semitism is a cancer that is spreading. Saintly souls who were taken from us because white supremacy is not a small group. It's not a thing of the past. It's not in the margins and the margins and the fringes of society anymore. It is being broadcast, it is being posted, it is being shared, it has been streamed, it's being tweeted and used to energize a very twisted base. But my friends, I'm also glad we are here, and in such incredible numbers. Because as much as we don't want to be here, it is important for our dear Muslim brothers and sisters to see this. My friends, my brothers and sisters, you are not alone, and you will never stand alone. Some are trying to scare you, but this night of support should give you, like you have given us, the Jewish people, courage and hope. Some are trying to fragment our communities, the Jews and Muslims. But you know what? They're bringing us closer and closer together. Some want to question the foundation of goodness and universal humanity with acts of terror, and yet you for us and now we for you are answering them each time with greater expressions of love for each other. Some are trying to create environments among us of resentment, and we keep responding with greater and greater generosity of spirit. They want conflict. We continue to show reconciliation. So yes, I wish we weren't here tonight, not for this. And I pray that we don't have to come back here again for something like this. But sadly, I'm afraid with the rise of hate globally, we will. With Islamophobic rhetoric and policies of those in power in the state and in this country, and too many who could help us push that back are silent, they're not like our mayor. We will be here again. God forbid. We will be here at a church. We will be at a synagogue. We'll be at a temple. We'll be at a school. But let us not forget that we will not ever let tragedy and fear rule over us. Because if it does happen, this community will be here. We will stand together like tonight, anywhere, stronger in unity everywhere, stronger together always. And one day, I truly believe, we will see the fulfillment of the promise of my sacred Torah. V'natati shalom ba'aretz, and I will grant peace to the land. V'shchaftem ve'ein macharid, and you shall lie down and be unafraid. One day, inshallah. One day, im irtze Hashem. One day, may it be God's will. Amen.
I'm like him. I wish we weren't here. I wish we were on different occasion. But we'll have many happy occasions to come, I promise you. Next, we're going to hear from a very special friend. He stood up in the legislation after he saw that hateful rhetoric and that hateful speech, and he did not take it lie down. He wasn't afraid. He didn't care. He has always spoke the truth. He has always defended what's right. And he and others, but he himself is the very special person that I thought you should hear from him today. Our special delegate, Mike Bushkin. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Sue. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be invited here today, and I'm honored to speak with you. Although I'm deeply saddened that it's under these horrific circumstances, and I also want to apologize that I'm the only member of the legislature that's here today, because a lot of what I'm about to say I would like for some of my colleagues to hear as well. When an event occurs, such as what happened in New Zealand last Friday, I believe it's important to respond appropriately. First and foremost, the appropriate response to hate is always love. However, it is also important to not merely give a broad condemnation of hate in all its forms, as some are wont to do, but to call it exactly what it is, an act of terrorism in the name of white supremacy. Events like these have become all too common, whether it's mosques in New Zealand, a synagogue in Pittsburgh, a church in South Carolina, or a nightclub in Orlando. These acts of terror are the hate-filled byproduct of jingoistic rhetoric that has saturated our social media and is sometimes even regurgitated by our political leaders. Now, make no mistake, this hateful rhetoric feeds the violent actions of these extremists. We know this because the terrorists themselves tell us so in the documents they sometimes leave behind. And that's why I also believe that it's important not to simply ignore hate when we see it or hear it in our daily lives. We must be very specific in calling it out for what it is, whether it's Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, racism, sexism, or homophobia. We must leave no room for interpretation or false equivocation. There are not good people on both sides. There is only one side to hate, and that side seeks to make children of God, who happen to be a little different from us, seem somewhat less than human. And we know that leads to more senseless violence and loss of life. Perhaps that is why all of our religions teach us a golden rule, to simply do unto others as you would wish them to do unto you. Now, at the end of World War II, as the concentration camps were being uncovered and the world was finally learning about the horrors perpetrated by the Third Reich, a two-word slogan was often repeated: never again. However, those two words would ring hollow if we don't apply them to all people. As we move on from here, we must remember to simply love each other, no matter how we pray, what we look like, or who we love. Because the only appropriate response to hate is love.
Love conquer all, right? Next, we're going to hear from our neighbor, our friend who has been friend with us for a very long time, Reverend John Thinnell from the Blessed Sacrament Parish. So please help him feel welcome.
I don't feel like I can stand here as an individual and preach against hate without acknowledging the impulses in my own heart that sometimes move toward hatred. I don't think that I can stand as a representative of the Catholic Church without acknowledging, both in recent years and past centuries, ways that the Catholic Church has been responsible for individual and group acts of hatred and terrorism. It has happened. When I hear Catholics complaining about the fact that we are sometimes ourselves the victims of misunderstanding and hatred, I always respond by saying, we taught them how to do that. And as I do a quick survey in my memory about acts of terror that have occurred in the last few decades, I would say that if there's any one group of people that we should be very concerned about as potential terrorists, it would be white, middle-class Christian men. So, shoot us all. As we respond to incidents of hate, I wonder if God does not want us to learn the truth about ourselves as agents and as victims, and to do what we can to root out those impulses of hatred or resentment that are within our own hearts. I believe that hatred comes out of fear. Fear that somehow our livelihood, our safety is being threatened. And that's not a bad thing, that human beings have the capacity to be afraid when there is a real threat. But when that fear goes out of bounds, we don't know how to respond and how to quell the hatred. In our Catholic tradition, today happens to be the feast of St. Joseph, the foster father of Jesus, the husband of Mary. And in the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, if you know that story, Joseph learns that his intended wife is pregnant, and he knows that he's not the father. As he evaluates his options, he goes for the least violent that he can think of, which is a quiet divorce, rather than a public stoning. These are the best options that this good, righteous human being can imagine for himself. And he goes to sleep and has a dream. And in the dream, the angel Gabriel comes to him, and the first words out of the angel's mouth and the first message from heaven in the Gospel of Matthew is, "Do not be afraid, Joseph, to take Mary into your home as your wife." I'm told, I've never checked it out, that the command, "do not be afraid," in both the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures is by far the most frequently repeated admonition to human beings. Do not be afraid. What am I afraid of? Are there good reasons for the fear? Is it unrealistic or irrational? How can I be part of the healing of this world if I'm not willing to examine and purge what is evil within myself? Again, in our Catholic tradition, this happens to be the period of Lent, the 40 days leading up to Easter Sunday, a time when we are encouraged to do some really strong introspection, to acknowledge whatever is less than good and righteous within ourselves, to confess that, to be sorry for that, and to seek God's healing. Just as the angel would speak the message to Joseph, "Do not be afraid," I hope that we here in this community tonight can be the angelic voice that says to our community and to the world, "Do not be afraid." I want to finish with a little story of something that has happened at Blessed Sacrament Church. A few months ago, I discovered somebody who had a lawn sign that says, "No matter where you are from, we're just glad you are our neighbor." And it says it in English and Spanish and Arabic. So I decided I would buy a bunch of them and just put them out for people to take home if they wished. And I expected a lot of people would say, "Hey, I don't want to do anything public. I don't want to advertise, it's fine. I don't have any prejudice or anything, but I don't want to advertise that." Well, to my surprise and delight, they were snatched up, gone, by the very first group that had access. And one of the households that took home one of those signs and put it in the front yard in front of their house told me that a couple weeks after they had done that, some people showed up at their front door whom they had never met before. Dark-skinned people with a plate of cookies, a family from Syria who said, "Thank you for putting that sign in your front yard." And a wonderful friendship has developed because of that. I hope that all of us will find positive, proactive ways not just to tolerate, not just to love in our hearts, but to put it out there publicly, to say, no matter where you are from, we're just glad you are our neighbor. And I'm sure there's lots of different ways to say that. Every Sunday, we stand up in our church and say we believe in one God who created everything, everyone. Friends, enemies, peace-loving people, terrorists. We all come from one God. As we own the truth about ourselves, we gain the opportunity to be more open, more inclusive, more honest, more humble, and more loving toward all the other people created by our God.
I mean, what a great message. If we all speak up and not listen to the silence, silence sometimes is deafening. We have been joined by Rabbi Joe Blair from the Temple of Israel. Thank you for joining us. And we were also joined by Father Abu Shai from the Coptic Church. Thank you for coming. Next, we're going to hear from a great man who constantly defends the human rights, civil rights. I haven't seen a person more compassionate about standing up for what's right, defending your civil rights, your civil liberty, more so than Joseph Cohen. He is the executive director of the ACLU West Virginia. We need him more than ever now.
I don't know about you, but I'm tired. I'm tired of vigils. I'm tired of candles. I'm tired of premature mourning. I'm tired of senseless violence. I'm tired over the confusion of what we have become and how we have gotten here. Now, there are people in this room with real power, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm so grateful that Mayor Goodwin and Delegate Pushkin are here today. Because I know that when those with power ignore acts of bigotry, when they fail to condemn hateful rhetoric and common, everyday white supremacy and xenophobia, that gives those without power the space to engage in acts that are incomprehensible. So to all the people who are with power who are here tonight, thank you very, very much. Thank you for saying what needed to be said. To all of the people with power who were invited but are not here tonight, some of those who did not even respond to the invitation, to those who talk about very good people being on both sides, to those who even utter the words, or who refuse to even utter the words Islamophobia or homophobia when those communities are attacked directly in our state capitol building, I say you are failures. You have failed as leaders. Your absence, your silence, your equivocation is nothing but cowardice, and it is pathetic, and you do not deserve your power. But I take solace in knowing that change is coming. Young people reject hatred that these leaders foment. Young people reject the fear that they peddle. Their time is nearly up. They're going to lose this undeserved power. To my Muslim friends and neighbors, who I've gotten to know so well for the worst reasons over the past few years, know that we love you, know that we're here for you, we mourn with you, and we stand ready to help in any way. Just please tell us how we can help. And I pray that we will see the day when these vigils, the candles, the mourning, the violence, and the confusion are nothing but a memory, a relic of the past.
Thank you so much, Joseph. We need you with us. And I'm like you, I hope we finish with this stuff. Let's go to a happier occasions, okay? Stephen Smith, who a lot of you know, could not be with us today because he's way up there in Jefferson. He's running for the governor of West Virginia in 2020. Come on, people. We gotta remember the good people, okay? Because as Joseph said, we did send an invitation to a lot of our elected officials, and one of them was the governor, and of course, not even a phone call or a response, just like many of them, by the way. So we're gonna play a video message for you to hear Steve Smith standing with us in solidarity. So if you please watch it.
Thank you so much for hosting this memorial tonight and for inviting me to participate. I wish I could be there in person, but while you're here in Charleston, we'll be in Jefferson County hosting a town hall where we'll hold a moment of silence for the victims and survivors in Christ Church. I'm thinking tonight about Aiden Ibrahim, the father of Muad Ibrahim, who they called Muadi. Muadi was the youngest victim of the killings, 3 years old. And witnesses say that when the shooter approached, Muadi rushed towards him. I'm thinking about Adan and Muadi because I can imagine being that father. I can imagine my 5-year-old running towards someone with no care, no fear in the world. It's that child's fearlessness that gives me inspiration and hope that we can defeat the kind of hatred that always comes from the top down and always will try to divide us, Christian versus Muslim, white versus black, native versus immigrant, trying to keep us apart because they know that once we come together, we can build a world where this never, ever happens again. Today, I am proud to stand with the Muslim community in West Virginia and across the world, and I will stand with you every day of the year until we have a world that our children deserve, where no one has to be afraid because of the religion they practice. No one has to be afraid to enter a house of worship. We can have that world, but only as we stick together and only as we follow the lead of people like you in this room who are showing us that love and kindness and generosity can win over hate. Thank you.
So I say to you people, remember in 2020, that's how we change. Okay, remember what we said, we gotta stand together? How we change things is by voting. Exercise your right. We're going to hear from Sky Kirshner. We're gonna make him our last speaker because we simply went over time. So Sky, he's a dear friend of ours. He comes here frequently. I think he's one of us. And he's going to give us a word of wisdom and inspiration.
Thank you, Sue. I started coming here, attending the services on Friday, the Friday after 9/11. Partially because I had heard that the mosque had been vandalized and someone had painted hate signs on the walls. And I wanted to come as a friend and to meet everybody and say not everyone is like the person that painted those signs. Over the years, I've gotten to know many friends here in this room. I've gotten to know your amazing imams. And every time there was an act of terrorism by someone who identified himself as a Muslim, there would always be a vigil of some sort and a letter in the newspaper that would say, this person does not represent Islam. Islam is a religion of peace. And now we find the shoe is on the other foot. The last 3 terrorist events that affect our community in Savannah, Georgia, in Pittsburgh, now in Christchurch in an English-speaking country, have all been performed by white extremists. And so I'm partially here to say, not every white person is a terrorist. Not every white person is an extremist. But some are. Some are. And the burden of privilege weighs heavy and unconscious on a number of us. For some of us, it was hard to get here tonight. There was a lot of traffic. I tried 4 different ways to get here, and each time it seemed like it was taking me longer and longer, and I was feeling anxious and nervous. And at one point, I was at an intersection, and I had an opportunity to contemplate gridlock. You know, gridlock at an intersection happens when one person thinks that they're more important than everybody else. When one person thinks that where they're trying to go is more important than where anybody else is trying to go. And so they go out into the middle at the time when it's somebody else's turn. And what happens? The whole society gets messed up. Everybody suffers when one person thinks their agenda is more important than someone else's. You know, there's a solution to this. You go first, and then I'll go. You go first, and then I'll go. You go, and then I'll go. I was thinking a lot about sanctuary and the meaning of sanctuary. Sanctuary comes from the root word safety. When we pray, we need a place where we can feel safe. We need a place where we can close our eyes and know that no one's going to hurt us. We need a place where we can be the most vulnerable that we can be. At the panel discussion yesterday, I was thinking about, there was a question about why do Muslims pray on Fridays? And why do Jews pray on Saturdays? And why do many Christians pray on Sundays? And I was thinking, well, you go first. You pray on Friday. And then maybe you could go and you could pray on Saturday, and maybe then I'll go. I'll pray on Sunday. I mentioned this in church on Sunday, and I was thinking, when I come here this Friday, where do I want to be? And I was thinking I could go upstairs and I could pray and listen to the sermon, and I would probably enjoy that. But there's a part of me that would wonder if a white person might be coming towards the building. And would that be the best place for me to be? And so I realized that where I want to be on Friday with the imam and the association's permission, I'd like to stand outside the building. Because if a white extremist is going to come to hurt my friends, I want them to have to go through somebody who's white first. We need to take care of our own. And our white extremist brothers and sisters need to remember that there are a lot of folks who are allies of our neighbors of all different colors, and that they will have to go through us. I don't pack. I'm not going to bring a gun. But if you'd like to join me, I bet we would have a powerful presence. After Sunday, one of my congregants sent me something that she found on Facebook. It's a picture of a guy in Manchester, England. And he's standing outside of the Medina Mosque in Manchester. And he's holding a sign. And the sign says, "You are my friends. I will keep watch while you pray." I'm going to make that sign on Friday. And if you want to join me, that would be wonderful. We are here gathered in unity, and I'd like to recommend that we take 4 slow, deep breaths together, and you can do with this silence whatever you'd like to do, pray to the God of your understanding, but there's nothing like praying together and knowing that you are safe in a room full of people. This is probably the biggest statement of resistance that we could make, to just be together knowing that we are safe in this room with each other. Could we do this for 4 slow breaths? Amen. Thank you for inviting me. Kun Jamilan.
Always. With that special prayer, we conclude our program today, but I want to make sure you all know how much I love you, and we appreciate you, all of our community. Extended appreciation and love to you all, our neighbors, our friends.